Okay, let's do it. Hello, everyone. We can add to the list of Israel's war crimes. We can add dressing up, disguising themselves as doctors. As you can see in this footage, this has been verified by various sources. This is footage of the IDF disguised as doctors, nurses, and civilians going in to a hospital in, I believe, southern Gaza, and heavily armed, and sending people out, as well as murdering at least a few people. There are conflicting reports as to how many they shot, murdered, or kidnapped, but at least murdered several. And this is the footage of them, and you can see very clearly at the very beginning of it, let's see, right here, that these armed gunmen, they are IDF, dressed as doctors and other forms of civilians. Many are, which is a war crime, by the way, in case you were wondering. Now, I know Israel's committed so many war crimes in the past few days that perhaps many people don't, have lost count and aren't really bothered by the ongoing war crimes. Many are saying that this is the Devon units, which is Devon unit, which is it's a commando brigade of the IDF, and it's notable for its undercover operations in urban areas, during which they'll wear civilian clothing to disguise themselves as the local population. Now, of course, in this one, they're dressed as doctors as well. All of this war crimes, to dress as doctors and to go into a hospital and murder people, is a war crime. To dress as enemy soldiers is a war crime. Now, like I said at the beginning of this, maybe Israel and the IDF have committed so many war crimes in this ongoing genocide of Gaza that perhaps this is very low down on the list. But they did go into this hospital, and it's been reported by many, although this video, I believe, is not being shown by mainstream media, at least in the West, because Western mainstream media doesn't really like to highlight that the IDF is dressing as doctors and going in and murdering people, murdering patients. They shot at least a couple of people in their beds. And I don't know how they chose who to murder and who not to murder, but it is horrific. And this ongoing genocide, like I said, we're getting close to 27,000 people killed, 70% of those women and children, 43 to 45% of those children. And it is 11,000, I believe, children have now been murdered by Israel, by the IDF. This is a U.S.-backed genocide. I always like to stress that, because if the U.S. is going to call any militia that Iran helps in any way Iran-backed, rather than actually saying who the people are, then we should just call this a U.S.-backed genocide, I guess, is what they're asking us to do, what the White House would have us do. It's a U.S.-backed genocide. And as I brought you, it's not just U.S. backing in terms of shipping bombs over there, which we have shipped tens of thousands of bombs to be dropped on Gazans, to be dropped on children. We've shipped those over there just since October 7th. But on top of that, the New York Times and others have reported on special operations, Marine Corps commanders being in Israel, helping Israel perpetrate this genocide in one form or another. Now, of course, they try to draw these little moral lines. Oh, they're only helping Israel, with the assassination of Hamas, even though Israel has apparently failed to assassinate a single Hamas leader. At least that's what the New York Times also reported recently. But they try and draw these little moral lines when, in fact, it doesn't really matter. This is the U.S. Helping Israel commit genocide. The CIA, as the New York Times reported just the other day, the CIA is in Israel helping them identify Palestinians to assassinate. So, how would you not call that a U.S.-backed genocide? It's quite a word game they're trying to play by pretending this is not U.S.-backed genocide. And by the way, during this coming hour, I have more information for you about the collapse of the Hamas rape reporting, the ongoing withdrawal of funding for the UNRWA, as well as a collapse of some of the reporting connected to these UN workers that were supposedly working with Hamas on October 7th. That reporting seems to be collapsing as well. Anyway, a lot of important stuff coming to you right now. And I'm also going to be bringing to you in a separate story, not Israel related. The last year, the death, the killing in many ways of 107,000 Americans due to something that your mainstream media just does not really cover, does not really seem to care much about. 107,000 Americans last year dead, and mainstream media, not a big deal, apparently. Anyway, back to this. Israel's war on Gaza. This is from Al Jazeera. Israeli troops storm Al Amal Hospital. So that is the footage I just showed you of IDF dressed as doctors and civilians. Israel, I think one man was carrying a wheelchair, like a folded up wheelchair, while he had a automatic rifle in his other hand. Israeli troops have stormed Al Amal Hospital in Khan Yunis. Now, Khan Yunis is also important because that is the area of Gaza that people were told to flee to. That was supposed to be the safe place in Gaza several weeks ago, and Israel has attacked it furiously. So, because Israel has been doing this again and again, saying places are safe, and then they attack the safe places. And they do this for multiple reasons. One is because they're committing ethnic cleansing, so they don't actually care. What's it matter whether they're killing innocent people or not? But on top of that, they want there to be no salvation for Palestinians. They want there to be nowhere safe where they can go, because Israel is trying to clear out all of Gaza. And if you give Palestinians a safe place, then they're not going to leave, which is Israel's hope. Now, of course, there are no exits right now for Gazans to escape through. Israel hopes to send millions into the Sinai Desert in Egypt, but so far Egypt has refused. The latest numbers posted here on Al Jazeera are 26,750 murdered by Israel, but that doesn't even count those under rubble. So, the ones that we don't know whether they're dead, they just call them missing. But when you count dead, missing, and wounded, we're talking 100,000 people. Anyway, to continue from Al Jazeera, Israeli troops have stormed Al Amal Hospital in Khan Yunis. The Israeli troops are demanding doctors, displaced Palestinians evacuate. Hamas's political chief reviews a new truce proposal, saying priority is to stop the brutal aggression against Gaza and complete withdrawal of occupation forces. And they have Hamas has continued to make it clear what they would take in order for them to release the hostages, but Israel doesn't want that. Israel wants this genocide. They want to eliminate as many Palestinians as they can, both with bombs and with disease. That's why they've killed or destroyed the entire medical system, is to make sure disease kills as many as possible. And as I brought you something the other day, also on CNN. Apparently, the lies from the IDF are getting so aggressive and so ridiculous that even CNN is reporting the lies, like revealing the lies of the IDF. This has to do with the IDF claiming that the reason they destroyed a cemetery, which I've also brought you that story in the past few days, that IDF has been repeatedly destroying cemeteries, destroying graves. They try and make some reason. In this case on CNN, they're claiming that there's tunnels underneath the cemetery, and that's why they have to destroy the cemetery. But anyway, let's, believe it or not, watch a second of CNN. Well, hold on. I want to go up here. So here's the IDF guy trying to tell him it's not safe to go view the tunnel that would prove why they needed to destroy this whole cemetery. Okay, not playing there, but seem to have an issue with the video. I think I don't have the VHN
in the general if we
VHS in correctly.
But what about if we don't film it? We just look with our eyes.
And then you might fall in, the whole thing can collapse. So you have to walk to the edge. The edge is not secured. It can collapse. There's machinery, so on. It's not something I'm going to take a risk on.
So he's worried that if he were to show from a distance, the CNN reporter, the tunnels that prove why they needed to destroy a cemetery, defile the dead, that the guy would fall in. That's what he says, which of course is laughable. You can keep somebody far enough away. They don't just fall in. Anyway, but this also goes to show that CNN is allowed to film at all because the IDF lets them. So it's very rare that that much is shown or told to us out of CNN and these mainstream outlets that the IDF hasn't allowed them to see. But as you'll see, CNN in a moment does one of the most rare things our mainstream media ever does, which is actually fact check what this genocidal maniac has told them.
Sorry.
The Israeli military later provided this drone footage showing the tunnel shaft we entered and another one nearby. CNN geolocated the footage using this satellite image. This outline shows where the cemetery once stood, and these are the two tunnel entrances clearly outside the graveyard. As for the tunnel they say they found here, where the cemetery once stood, the military never provided any evidence.
Okay, so there you are. Even CNN fact-checking the IDF, which is lying out their ass and their face holes about the fact that they have to destroy these cemeteries. Now, as I mentioned a couple of days ago when I brought you this story of them defiling cemeteries in Gaza, it of course raises the question, okay, well, the IDF's lying about there being tunnels under these cemeteries, so they destroyed the cemetery for some other reason. So what is that reason? I mean, it's an easy question to come up with. There must, if there's no tunnels there, what? They don't get any more victims. It doesn't help with ethnic cleansing. So what's it? It doesn't help with genocide. Why destroy these cemeteries? Well, it actually does help with ethnic cleansing in terms of cultural genocide, in terms of destroying the entire culture of a people and making sure they have no reason to come back to these areas. If you keep their cultural heritage sites, if you keep their cemeteries, if you keep their places of worship, et cetera, then they are very much tied to this land to the tune of hundreds of years culturally. But Israel is trying to wipe away all of that. They want to wipe away their cemeteries, wipe away their ancestry there. They want to wipe away the culture that is in these places and was in these places. And Israel thinks they can do that both by killing as many people as they can, also by killing academics and those who actually are the most informed on the history, the culture, etc., but also by destroying these places of prayer, these cemeteries, these other things that would tie people to a land. And again, this is so gut-wrenchingly repulsive, and yet it is also genocide 101. If you want to destroy a people and erase them and erase their connection to the land, this is what you do. You kill as many as you can. You kill the journalists, you kill the academics, you kill the medics and the hospital systems so that as many die from disease as possible. These are all, honestly, it's a checklist of what to do for genocide. You also don't care if you're killing children because that actually helps, because you're taking out the next generation, which, as I've repeatedly said on this show, the average for number of children, percentage of children killed in modern warfare, because believe it or not, bombs are getting a little more, a little more strategic, a little more specific into who they kill, in terms of where you're aiming these things. It's not cannonballs anymore. But of course, Israel's using dumb bombs intentionally. They're not actually aiming them very strategically. But what I was going to say is the average in modern war is 6 to 8% children killed in modern war. In Gaza, it's 43% or 45%, depending on the day. And that's because Israel is doing what most countries don't do nowadays, which is just try and obliterate everyone. This is straight up genocide, as the ICJ said. I mean, granted, it was an interim ruling. They did not say they've decided yet, but they said there is enough facts there. The UN's court, there's enough facts there to continue the case of the South Africa's genocide case against Israel. Okay, so I wanted to bring you how some of these stories are collapsing, as you can kind of assume they would. By the way, everyone, please click thumbs up. Please click subscribe if you haven't already. I'm sorry, I have a bit of a cold. I hope that's not too bothersome during this live stream. But this show must go on. The news must go on that your mainstream media very rarely brings you. I know I showed you a CNN clip, but that was the exception that proves the rule. You guys know that expression, right? That is the rare thing CNN does every once in a while, and they probably don't like when a report like that slips through, but it's very rare. Anyway, okay, so in terms of this story collapsing, and I imagine it will keep collapsing, but who knows? The day after the ICJ, which is a UN court, right? It's the highest court internationally that we have. It is a UN court. But the day after, the ICJ decides not to throw out the genocide charges against Israel, which was a major accomplishment in international law. That actually it was 15-2, and each of these things heavily saying that there is enough here, there's enough proof here to continue the case, South Africa's case of genocide against Israel. Now, the day after, Israel says, oh, we just found out that 12 UNRWA workers, which is the part of the UN that helps in Palestine, 12 workers were working with Hamas on October 7th, helped Hamas commit October 7th. That's what they're saying. 12 workers, and they just found it out, right? It just, it's coincidence. Just, oh my God. They just looked on their desk and the files were there, and they were like, oh, look at that. Day after the ICJ makes their decision. Okay, so where is that information coming from? First of all, where that 12 UNRWA workers were connected to Hamas. Where's it coming from? But also, here's the other thing I like to point out. Even if this story did not continue to collapse, even if there were 12 UNRWA employees that were connected or working somehow with Hamas on October 7th, guess what? There's 30,000 UNRWA employees. Deciding to defund the entire organization, the entire group, which helps tens of thousands of Palestinians, is nonsense. Also, even if it were true that there were 12 involved in October 7th, you still can't commit genocide. You can't go, we found 12 UNRW, so we can genocide whoever we want. No, that's not how that works. It doesn't matter. It doesn't actually matter. But saying there's 12 out of 30,000, that'd be like if you found out 12 Apple computer employees out of whatever, 60,000 or however many they have. 12 Apple employees were found stealing a car and selling it, for parts. So therefore, we're disbanding all of Apple. Now, granted, Apple's a horrific company, so I'm fine with that. But still, that... it's utterly insane to be like, 12 were gonna. It's garbage. But I imagine this story is going to keep collapsing because the odds of Israel just discovering this the day after the ICJ decision is laughable. Anyway, here's what we're finding out today. Social media activists have revealed that one of the authors of the Wall Street Journal article, which was one of the main articles about the 12 UNRWA employees, one of the authors of the Wall Street Journal article is an Israeli correspondent named Carrie Keller Lynn. Lynn was former IDF. The Wall Street Journal article that revealed the connection between the UN agency and Hamas was written by former IDF. And she continues to maintain close ties with former Israeli spokesperson Eliza Landis. So she's former IDF, which, you know, basically makes her Israeli. I know that a lot of people, there are a lot of Americans that actually serve in the IDF. And I know we need to stop using the goddamn term serve. There are a lot of Americans that kill people for the IDF or help the IDF kill people. But anyway, it's whether she calls herself Israeli or not, she is. And this is the article that blew up the firestorm day after the ICJ decision. One of the articles, and here she is in her IDF uniform. What a great journalist, right? Writing that report. But we're seeing this again and again, that when you see a report that seems a little too convenient and a little too insane, when that comes out, you almost always find connections like this. You almost always find that there's a reason this report suddenly showed up the day after the ICJ decision. So that story's collapsing, but that's not the only story that's collapsing that involves Israel trying to defend this genocide. The other thing one of the big things Israel's done to try and defend this genocide is say Hamas, right? The beheaded babies completely debunked. It was all, the beheaded baby story was all sourced back to one guy who's a sociopathic former IDF settler. A settler means people who go and steal Palestinian lands with tanks and then say they live there. Anyway, it all was sourced back to one dude who said, yeah, I saw it. Lots of beheaded babies. Oh, my God. They were beheading babies left and right. It was all garbage. And now most of the media, if they want to pretend to consider themselves even anywhere near accurate, have retracted all of that. But the latest one, the one from a couple weeks ago, is the accusations of mass rape. Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to jump out and say, absolutely no one was ever raped. I don't know. But I do want to say this, that even if someone were raped, still can't commit genocide. Yes, that rape is horrific and wrong, and I'm opposed to it. Still can't commit genocide. Still can't bomb children. Still can't bomb hospitals. Still can't dress up like goddamn doctors with guns and go in and shoot people in their beds. You can't. You just can't. It's all war crimes. It's all illegal. I don't care about what led to it. And of course, it didn't really lead to it. Israel's been A, doing this in slow motion for years and years, and B, Israel's waiting for something like this to use for these means at minimum. Anyway, but let's get back to this mass rape story, which was not that there were a few outlets that weren't just sourcing other outlets, right? That said they did their own reporting and they, confirmed this or whatever. But as we're seeing multiple places, here's from Max Blumenthal, as the Hamas mass rape narrative collapses, new evidence surfaces suggesting the Guardian's, doesn't have her full name there, but the Guardian reporter not only plagiarized NBC's similarly bogus report, she copied from the same document furnished to both outlets by the Israeli government. So these are supposed to be two original reports on the mass rape allegations. And you can see from the highlights that they have word for word the same stuff in them. Now, the only way you end up with word for word like this, if you don't say you're quoting another article, is if you have the exact same source of the article. And I don't mean the same person talking to you. You could have the same person talking to you, and you're not going to write word for word the same article. The only way you write word for word the same article is if someone sends you a document with those word for words, and you then copy paste it into your article. So clearly you have NBC News and The Guardian getting this article from, they've been sent it from someone. Now it's pretty clear it's the Israeli government. I don't think that takes more than a couple of brain cells to rub together, but Here is, yeah, so they reveal that these two are nearly identical. This outlet reached out to both The Guardian and NBC and received no response. Given the revelation yesterday that the New York Times is reinvestigating its own reporting on this subject, we hope this additional information will assist in bringing the truth to light. So the New York Times, which was a separate report about the mass rape, that article has also is being debunked by many people online who are carefully working on it and researching on it and looking at the sources. And the New York Times is now trying to defend their reporting. The journalist of that article, saying there was this evidence of mass rape, it has put out not a retraction but a defense where he claims, I've reviewed my own writing and I've decided my own writing is really good because I reviewed it and really good writing I did. It's kind of like when a corporation or the CIA is asked to review themselves to see if they're operating correctly. And then the CIA or a corporation will come forward and go, we did an internal review. It turns out we are awesome. We are just great. We did great. So the New York Times reporter who has been had his article torn limb from limb, has reviewed it and said he likes it. Apparently, even one of the main people that he claims was raped and then killed, the family of that person, and it's all horrific. I mean, I can't even believe we're in a world where this is discussion, but the family of that person has said they haven't seen no evidence or even heard anything saying that she was raped. So they're refuting it. And so we're seeing that steadily collapse. Also in Hamas's statement, and I know you don't have to say everything Hamas says is legit, just like you shouldn't believe just on face value the statements from any groups or people that just come forward and say they've done A, B, or C. But Hamas's statement is that is against their religion and was not the aim in any way of what they did on October 7th. And they've seen no evidence. They said in their statement, they said, although mistakes may have happened, and I believe the mistakes they're talking about are during these firefights, innocent civilians may have been hit. Their goal was not that at all. It was to take hostages. And of course, they were going to fire at anyone firing at them. But now, again, I'm all of this is horrific, but none of it, even if the worst version of what Hamas did were the truth, you still can't commit genocide. You still can't kill 27,000 people. Okay? It's repulsive, and you're revealing yourselves. You're revealing what you really stand for and who you really are as you do that. So, okay, so let's move on to the collapse of the latest, yet another collapse of the information, yet another info collapse or propaganda collapse of the information about the Iran-backed militia that just killed 3 U.S. troops. Even the Pentagon is now admitting they have no evidence that Iran was involved in the killing of the 3 U.S. troops. So let's see here. I'm going to play that video of the Pentagon admitting that they don't have evidence of that specific drone attack that killed those 3 U.S. troops. Right, I brought you that story yesterday, and it's all over all the mainstream media, and all the mainstream media is using it to say Biden needs to immediately attack Iran and bomb various countries, which he seems more than happy to do. But here is the Pentagon admitting that they don't have evidence that the Iran-backed militants were operating of for or by Iran.
Idris.
Just to follow up, you said Iran was behind the attack. What does that mean? Have you seen evidence of financing or directing anything specific to this attack? Not just generally, but specifically.
So maybe I need to clarify further.
Yeah, do you? Iran was behind the attack. Remember those words. Iran was behind the attack.
From what Lita had mentioned, we know that Iran funds these groups like Kataib Hezbollah. We know
That doesn't mean they're behind this attack.
that these IRGC-backed militias are the ones responsible for attacks on our troops in Iraq and Syria. Beyond that, we're doing an intelligence assessments. We don't have. I can't give you today that.
Beyond that, we have, you see her start to stutter because basically she was saying beyond that, we don't have anything. We don't have any evidence that Iran was behind or facilitated or requested this assassination of 3 U.S. troops. Now, of course, I brought you yesterday, I brought you the other points on this, which is what the hell is the U.S. doing in Jordan? Why is this militant group called Iran-backed every time they mention them, but they barely ever even say their name or who they are? It's just Iran-backed. That's all we're ever told. Iran-backed. Iran-backed. And besides, if you're going to just say, and by the way, I'm operating on the assumption that Iran actually does give some money to these militant groups. I don't know whether that's even true, but I'm just giving them the benefit of the doubt on that part of it because it still doesn't matter. Even if Iran does fund some of these groups in some way, let's remember, here's an article from the 1990s that the U.S. funded and armed bin Laden and the Mujahideen. This is an article from 1990s, The Independent. Anti-Soviet warrior puts his army on the road to peace with a big smiling grin of bin Laden. So there you go. So I guess clearly we should have called Mujahideen, which ultimately becomes, Al-Qaeda and Taliban, etc. I guess we should just call them all U.S.-backed. U.S.-backed Al-Qaeda, U.S.-backed bin Laden. Because there was a long time. This is a 1993 article, and the U.S. loved bin Laden. He was our man. So just saying Iran-backed is bullshit. It's just designed to have a way to attack Iran. Now, I do think that far more legitimately than this Iran-backed militia, which the Pentagon has just admitted they don't have evidence of, they don't have evidence that Iran had anything to do with the killing of these 3 troops. Far more legitimately is the U.S.-backed genocide of Gaza. Because not only do you have evidence that the U.S. is sending munitions there, not only do you have evidence that you've got Marine Corps higher-ups in Israel helping out, but you also you have evidence that the CIA, according to the New York Times, is helping Israel assassinate Palestinians. So, and also I forgot to mention, the Pentagon's also piloting drones over Gaza to give the intelligence to Israel. So the Pentagon and the CIA are actually operating as an arm of Israel in this genocide. That is far more U.S.-backed genocide than this is an Iran-backed militia. But of course, for some reason, they never call it a U.S.-backed genocide. I don't know, can't put my finger on why that is. Why our mainstream media just can't seem to figure out that this is a U.S.-backed genocide. One more update on what's going on in Israel, or with Israel. Israeli warplanes are bombing the area of the chalets on the outskirts of the town of Qiyam, south of Lebanon. So Israel is bombing Lebanon. Now, this is not the first time they bombed Lebanon in the last few weeks, so I'm not saying this is a breaking news, but this is as of today. There is more Israeli bombing of Lebanon going on. I've brought to you prior on these live streams more information on that and how Lebanon, Hezbollah is actually a substantial military, and Israel is proving that they're pretty incompetent in terms of actual ground combat. This doesn't mean they don't have the firepower to just obliterate anyone and everyone. They're a nuclear power, even though they've never their acting government has never admitted it. They've had former government officials. They've had former government officials admit that Israel has nuclear weapons. But so the U.S. is bombing. Israel's bombing Lebanon. But on top of that, as this regional war spins out of control, which I think at this point is what Israel wants because they want the U.S. to get involved. The White House has notified Congress that the U.S. has troops on the ground in Yemen. This is also a big deal because the Pentagon claimed they did not know of any troops on the ground in Yemen. So the Pentagon was still denying it, but the White House has told Congress that there are indeed U.S. troops on the ground in Yemen. As you know, Yemen and the Houthis are some of the few standing up against this genocide. They've been attacking with drones. They've been attacking ships that are headed to Israel, supplying Israel, and they are causing major problems economically for shipping in that area because, you know, one of the only ways that, you know, people in the world who want to stop this genocide have to impact it is economically. You know, when Israel sees an economic impact on their apartheid state for behaving the way they're behaving, for committing genocide, then it may actually influence them. Whereas, you know, the U.S. acts like this, Yemen's actions are just terrorist. But, you know, it's funny how you can commit genocide and it not be terrorism, and yet you attack the ships that are supplying the genocide, and that's apparently what the U.S. calls terrorism. But that was all a tangent about the fact that the U.S., the White House is now admitting that there are troops on the ground in Yemen. Troops on the ground in Yemen. We know the troops on the ground in Jordan, right? Because they were just attacked. Three U.S. troops killed, apparently. Now, I am a little skeptical as to what exactly went down with those 3 U.S. troops, because it was, as I brought to you yesterday, just a couple of days after, or 9 days after, a major 20-year deal between Iran and Russia for oil, between the two of them, which, of course, the U.S. does not like. No likey. And now suddenly the U.S. has a far greater reason to go after Iran now that Iran-backed militias are killing our troops. There's clearly a good reason to go after them. Okay, I'm going to move on to more U.S. hegemony, more U.S. empire, more U.S. Attacks around the world. But this one has to do with Haiti. And actually, this is a good news. This is kind of a good news. It's about the global South actually standing up against the U.S., pushing for an invasion of Haiti, another invasion of Haiti, one of our many. And very little media is covering this story. But before I do that, please, everyone, click thumbs up, click subscribe, click share, click follow. I am one of the most suppressed and censored comedian commentators on the webs, but in America. And, you know, my TV show has been destroyed by U.S. sanctions. My main YouTube channel banned around the world. My podcast banned from Spotify. It's back up under a new name called The Leecamp Show. But anyway, so the reason I'm able to continue is truly due to you all and your help. So please click thumbs up and share and all those things. And if you are following me on YouTube, it's youtube.com/momentofclarity. If you're following me there and you've already clicked subscribe, make sure that when you click the bell icon, there's multiple options. And if you want to, and I hope you want to, click all, because if you don't click all, you won't be alerted to my videos. And the other thing you can do is just remember to show up, because that would be the best way to defeat the suppression, is just show up every day at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, except I skipped Wednesdays. So it's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. Okay, so you might remember from several months ago, the U.S. is saying, "Oh, Haiti's spinning out of control." Now, I'm not saying Haiti's doing great. Haiti is in a lot of trouble. They're not doing great. But one of the biggest reasons they're not doing great is because of U.S. interference over decades and decades. The U.S. couped their first ever democratically elected leader, Jean-Bertrand Aristide. They put him into a U.S. military plane and dropped him in the middle of Africa. That was in 2004. But Haiti has suffered for years and years because it is one of the only states that was founded on a slave rebellion and has maintained their independence, at least for the most part, for many decades. But because they were a slave rebellion, they only completed payments to France for their freedom in like the 80s or 90s. I think the 90s, they finally finished paying off the billions of dollars they owed for being free, because they stole France's property being themselves. They were France's property, apparently, and they owe France a lot of money for escaping. And so anyway, that has made the country very, very poverty, stricken, and it has been very difficult for them. And the U.S. Marines have shown up every other day to just make sure things are going the way we want. But just a few months ago, the U.S. said, oh, well, it's gotten very bad in Haiti, so we need to send down a peacekeeping group to help keep the peace in Haiti. And the U.S., because the U.S. kind of knows their reputation, I think a little bit around the world, the U.S. has decided, well, it shouldn't be the U.S. So they're trying to find other countries to be a part of this peacekeeping group, and it did not work out. Kenya's court, so Kenya was going to be the group that was going to send people to keep the peace in Haiti. Kenya's court put a halt to the Haiti deployment. Here's the moment from the court where the Kenyan court said no.
2. A declaration is hereby issued that National Security Council has no mandate to deploy police officers outside Kenya under Article 240, Sub-Article 8 of the Constitution or any other law. A declaration, number 3, is hereby issued that any decision by any state organ or state officer to deploy police officers to Haiti and any other action, any further action or steps taken by any state organ or state officer in furtherance of such a decision contravenes the Constitution and the law and is therefore unconstitutional, illegal, and invalid.
So yet again, you have the global South finally having the ability to stand up against U.S. hegemony. And when I say U.S., I capsulate in all of that, the EU and UK and everything, because in most ways, those countries are acting as vassal states in issues such as these to the U.S., but they're standing up against Western control of the world. And this hasn't happened before, really, not at this level, and not in such a large scale. You have most of the global South siding with with South Africa's genocide case against Israel. This is just it's a big deal, and yet again, you have Kenya, a African country, saying, essentially, we're not going to be part of U.S. colonialism. I mean, that's what it is. It's U.S. hegemony. And anyway, pretty impressive moment. And of course, your mainstream media would never bring you this, even though this has everything to do with the U.S. The invasion of Haiti has everything to do with the U.S. And Kenya standing up and saying we're not going to be part of it has everything to do with the U.S. But your mainstream media, not interested, not important. Okay, I am about to get to the one of the big stories I wanted to cover, which is the 107,000 Americans that were killed last year alone, and you're by one cause, and your mainstream media barely want to talk about it at all. All of that is going to be at rumble.com/leecamp. It's free to watch over there. Rumble.com/leecamp. And my locals page, of course. Those of you who are members on locals, thank you so much for supporting this show and making it possible. All of my stuff, by the way, is at that Linktree link that's on the page there, linktree.com/leecamp. So if you forget where any of my stuff is, my books, my podcasts, the locals community where you can actually chat with other fans and support this show and all that stuff, That is all at linktree.com/leecamp. If you're on Rumble, you can click the red Join Lee button and you can find my local stuff there. But all right, I'm going to continue on with that story of the 107,000 Americans killed last year. So join me at rumble.com/leecamp, and I will see you there. Free to watch over there, by the way. Free to watch.